Hello, welcome to Architecture 101. Today, we're gonna talk about Gerrit Rietveld's Schroder house. Gerrit Thomas Rietveld was a Dutch furniture designer and a famous architect. He was one of the principal members of the Dutch artistic movement called the Stijl, which is also known as Neoclassicism. He is actually famous for the Rietveld Schroder house, the one we're talking about today, which is actually UNESCO's World Heritage Site. The Schroder house in Utrecht, located in the Netherlands, was built in 1924 for Miss Truus Schroder and her 3 children. Rietveld worked side by side with the lady to create a house, but she envisioned it that was free from association and that it could create a connection between the inside and the outside. Now, we're gonna analyze the different aspects that were taken into consideration to build this house. In color, it's clearly established all the component elements that involve the volume are linked, discontinued, and classified through color. Rietveld used 3 tones of gray, white, black for the surface, and the lineal elements are emphasized by the use of red, blue, and yellow, according to its characteristics and location. In the walls, he applied the optical tendency the planes have at the moment to lag behind or advance by the effect of the color. Each plane is treated with entity and differentiated by darkness or lightness values, which is a clear intention to maintain the exterior articulated image in the house interior, moving the planes and color movement that were used on the exterior. In terms of light, the Schroder house architect Rietveld varies the color depending on the room size and depending on the natural illumination level, but also he varies it to highlight the global image of the house. The skylight cover, the big windows, and the balcony make a visual connection between interior space and the space surrounding the house. There is also a special continuity that is more tangible when you open the door and windows and let the light in. The most representative example of how the light changes the spaces is actually the window on the first plan, where the walls may seem like they all get together in one, and if you open that window the corner disappears and the fusion between exterior and interior space is more explicit. With the rhythm, the concept of the Schroder house was to create a totally asymmetric place, where the architect wanted the visual independence of its parts through the physical separation of the horizontal and vertical planes and the use of color to accentuate these differences. In this case, it is very hard to find the use of rhythm because this is a more common aspect in symmetric or bigger places where the architects can play with the rhythm mixed with asymmetry. However, we can still say we have in Schroder house the type of repetition of differences because in this house there are plans that are repeated but they have different dimensions and shapes. In the circulation, we can talk about the lower level that is radial. Coming up from the entrance of the house, there is the main hall. Through this hall, there is the access to the reading room, the studio, and the central stairs. Beyond the stairs, movement becomes circular from the kitchen, dining, living area to the servants' quarters, which opens onto the small working space. This working space further opens onto the studio. The partitions of the upper level are open. The circulation is still quite radial in nature, but its circulation spaces are much wider. Some areas such as the hall disappears and the stairwell loses of the shaft-like quality it gains when the partitions are closed. When all the partitions of the upper levels are closed, their circulation is radial except for that circulation of spaces that are not tighter. In addition, spaces are created such as a small hall and the stairwell being transformed into a shaft-like structure. After studying all these different aspects of the house, we can say what makes a Schroder house An icon of this modern architecture is its radical approach to design, the use of space, and the purity of its concepts and ideas as represented in the Stijl movement. Its transformational quality of evenly matched spaces composed of independent planes perfectly mix the goal of the Stijl or Neoclassicism movement. As with these early chairs, Rietveld gave a new spatial meaning to the straight lines and rectangular planes of the various architectural structure elements, slabs, posts, and beams, which were composed in a balanced ensemble and meets up with the main concept of the house, which was the interaction with the inside and the surroundings of it. This is actually one of the things that acknowledge this house as a honorable site by the UNESCO and one of the most representative edifications of the modern movement of architecture.